I know what it feels like to be the most capable person in the room and then go home and still feel empty. Now I spend my mornings on my own terms, charging more for 1 hour than I used to make in one day. I was going through another bout of extreme stress. I was a single mother. I was in school full time. I was working. I was caregiving and trying to do everything and be everything for everyone else. My body staged a revolt and it said, yeah, no, we're not doing this again because 16 years ago you had this issue. Now you've doubled the trouble. We're just shutting down all completely. I was not lazy. I was over leveraged. I was bankrupting my body. I was bankrupting my spirit, and it wasn't cute. It wasn't the way to go. The second pillar is radical selectivity. Fewer clients, deeper work, higher fees. Let me say it again. Fewer clients, deeper work, higher fees. So you have been the backbone for that company for a decade or so, but you've never actually audited what was costing you, and that's why I built the blissful exit audit. It's not a generic quiz. This is literally a deep dive into your readiness to leave. This is about your finances, your identity, and your next move. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Self-Care Oasis podcast. I'm Samantha, the Self-Care Alchemist, and I spent 20 years in Fortune 500 rooms at NASA, Google, Verizon, all companies that I'm pretty sure you've heard of. I know what it feels like to be the most capable person in the room and then go home and still feel empty. Now I spend my mornings on my own terms, charging more for 1 hour than I used to make in one day. This video is for the woman who is starting to wonder whether there's another way. If you're on the verge of burnout, if you are thinking about semi-retirement, if you're 50 plus and you want to get out of the rat race, then tune in. So how did it all start? It actually started when I was 16. You're like, but you're in your 50s now. Yes, I am in my 50s. But when I was 16 years old, I had extreme stress. I went to a boarding school, working my way through. When I first got to the boarding school, I was under so much stress that my body shut down. My reproductive system said, this is too much. There's no reason for us to continue to go through this reproductive process if your body is overwhelmed. So I didn't have my monthly period for about 4 to 6 months. For whatever reason, it came back. At that time, I was not pregnant. I was not engaged sexually. And so this was just a body reproductive shutdown period. Fast forward 16 years later, at age 32, I was going through another bout of extreme stress. I was a single mother. I was in school full time. I was working. I was caregiving and trying to do everything and be everything for everyone else. My body staged a revolt and it said, yeah, no, we're not doing this again because 16 years ago you had this issue. Now you've doubled the trouble. We're just shutting down all completely. So I went to the doctor when I was having hot flashes and sweating bouts. I was filled with anxiety. I was filled with dread. Everywhere I went, I could not focus. I could not get myself together. And even though I was what one of my therapists termed functionally depressed, I was still doing all the things because I have to feed my kids. I have to take care of myself. I have to get these good grades. I have to make sure I keep my job. Everything that I was doing was for survival, but my body was tired of survival mode and it said, wake up. Now I'm going to show you that the body can't sustain this level of stress much longer. I went to hormonal imbalance at a very early age. My doctor recommended HRT, which at the time I wasn't too keen on doing because I didn't believe in the science at the time. And there was a lot of warnings that I wasn't willing to take a risk on my body for. So I looked for ways to manage it all on my own. I went back to my natural roots and started researching about herbs and supplements. And so I got on a few things and that really helped manage my symptoms. But managing my symptoms was not enough. I was not lazy. I was over leveraged. I was bankrupting my body. I was bankrupting my spirit. And it wasn't cute. It wasn't the way to go. Fast forward through the next 10, 15 years, I found myself again and again in this space of burnout, again and again in the space of overwhelm and over leveraging. I finally got to the place where I said enough is enough. I'm not doing this anymore. I made a decision when I was about 45 years old that I wanted to retire early, and I started slowly building up to that in the back of my mind. I was still getting new jobs and still burning out. I was taking breaks, but going back. This cycle I was going through wasn't sustainable, and I needed to do something different. If you're still grinding at a company that doesn't see you the way you see yourself, stay with me, because I was there. I was the smartest person in the room. I was taking care of not just my work tasks, but I was taking care of the mental load of a life of a single mother and a caretaker. You probably can relate to that. So what we need to do is reframe what success looks like. There's a myth that says soft life means doing nothing. Believe me, I'm not doing nothing. I'm just doing less. I'm doing it on my terms. It means doing the right things for the right people at the right time. This is what soft life is. Now I am working a few hours a week, maybe 15 hours a week. I get to charge premium pricing, and it's work that I really enjoy doing. This is not about creating another job for yourself. Being in semi-retirement affords me the opportunity to be selective, not just with pricing, but with the people that I want to work with. That's really important because, especially as a Black woman, in workplaces, we experience so many microaggressions, sexism, racism, ageism now because we're now older. And if you're my Gen X women, if you're my early millennials, you know that ageism is a real thing. And then for the Black women that were pushed out of the workplace in early 2025, that's another layer because you're not only dealing with the racism and sexism, ageism, you're dealing with just a value, like my worth. And even though it's not your fault that you were pushed out, it still affects your self-esteem. And so for those of you who are still on the job, how do you prevent that? How do you build resilience when it comes to that? So there are three pillars that I want to share with you, that three pillars of the soft life professional blueprint. The first one is your expertise monetization. You're not starting over, you're repackaging decades of mastery. You have been in your field for years. You know your stuff. So the first thing in the first part of the blueprint is to leverage that experience, monetizing your expertise. And you don't have to do all the things that you did in corporate because you may be one of those people who they piled on the role of 2 or 3 people expecting you to get it done on time, and get it done with perfection. That is unsustainable. That's not realistic. So you're going to take just 1 or 2 areas of your expertise that you actually enjoy and monetize that. The second pillar is radical selectivity. Fewer clients, deeper work, higher fees. Let me say it again. Fewer clients, deeper work, higher fees. Because you are the boss of you, you get to select the people who you want to partner with. You're partnering with a few people who see your value and who want to do deeper work with you and who's willing to pay the higher fees that your expertise requires. The third thing is systems over hustle. We're looking at automations, maybe digital products if you have them, and leverage to replace the 60-hour work week. So when you have systems in place, you're not working in your business as much. You're working on your business. And this is so crucial for women who have been so used to the hustle and grind, the never-ending work cycle when you're in a regular corporate job. When you're in leadership, you have people to deal with, and you have to deal with projects. You have to deal with paperwork. You have to deal with so many different things. But when you're able to systemize all those things, you don't have to deal with that as much anymore. You have been the backbone of that company for a decade. You've trained people who now outrank you, and you've swallowed your pride in rooms where it made others look good. But here's what nobody's asked you. Have you ever actually audited what staying there is costing you? Not just in your salary or your title, but in your health and your creativity and your sense of self. This is one of the places in the areas that I like to talk to you about specifically. Because you don't know your worth, you are able to really quantify how much you can charge in the pay, but in your time, in your energy. And if you're going through hormonal upheavals, your energy is precious. Your time is precious. If you are holding on to your job because your identity is wrapped in it, because you've had so many years of experience and promotions, but the reality is you capped your income because you've been living by the ceiling that a corporation has put on you. But you have done and are worth so much more than that. You may experience some grief over leaving an identity. It can be very painful. If you are a director, if you are VP, if you are a senior specialist, you have built that career and now you are faced with a new challenge. Are you going to be pushed out of meetings? Are you going to be sidelined, as it were? Are you going to have to deal with ageism at a different level? All these things are important questions that you have to ask and audit to determine, is it really valuable for you to stay or no? Step one is knowing the stage that you're in. Are you in the awakening stage where you still feel the pull of something more? Or are you on the launchpad where you have one foot out and one foot in, ready to build your own business? These require completely different moves because the get ready or the am ready stage are places where you want to really be realistic and honest with yourself. And then step two is you want to audit your assets, your expertise, your network, your credibility, your IP. They're all worth money. And most women don't know what they're sitting on. And the reality is, I didn't know either because I spent so much time trying to get the next credential, get the next certification, get the next degree. And when all these things are stacked up, we are still hungry for validation. We don't take into account all that we've done as much as we need to. But here's the thing. Other people see your value. That's why you're still in the same position or getting more tasks added to your plate. They know the value that you bring and they're billing accordingly. You want to price for transformation. That's the third thing, not time. Because we're so used to working per hour and even in a salary, you are really time-based because if you are forced to work 40 to 60 hours a week, then you're getting paid for those hours based on the time that you put in. You need to walk through how charging for outcomes over hours changes everything. I'm always asking women that I talk to adopt a consulting mindset. That makes a big difference because you are pricing for transformation. You're pricing for the efficiency, for the value, for the ease that you bring to the table. And it's really important for you to leverage that and begin to charge for that. And then the fourth step is building the bridge and not leaving. You don't want to quit and hope. You want to build revenue before you leave. I recommend that highly. That's what I did. I built my consulting business while I was working so that I could remember that my time, my contributions are valuable. I started to build this while I was working my regular job. And it made such a big difference because it got me out of the mindset of an employee and started putting me in the mindset of a consultant so that I'm seeing my value more and more, even on the job. I am no longer going into meetings and waiting for them to tell me what to do. I'm making recommendations. I am now giving them almost a strategy so that they can make their processes better. They can make their entire workflow better. So you want to keep that in mind and really ask questions. How much is my time and talent and skills worth? That's important to know. So you have been the backbone for that company for a decade or so, but you've never actually audited what was costing you. And that's why I built the blissful exit audit. It's not a generic quiz. This is literally a deep dive into your readiness to leave. This is about your finances, your identity, and your next move. In this audit, you begin to know which stage you're in, the awakening or the launchpad. If you are interested in learning more about where you are and taking this audit, I call it the blissful exit audit. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments. So download it and spend about an hour of your time with truth and find out your next 3 moves. If this resonated with you, share it with someone in your circle who is brilliant, burned out, and ready. She doesn't have to do this alone. She doesn't have the roadmap yet, but you can share this with her. Then I want you to subscribe. And every week I will bring you tools, the truth, and the strategy to build your soft life on purpose. This is what self-devotion is. This is what self-care Oasis is. Next week, I'm going to give you the exact pricing formula I use to replace my corporate income without a big audience. I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of. How am I going to get clients? What do I price? I'll share all that with you in our next video. This should spark some ideas for you. But with the blissful exit audit, it's going to make it crystal clear what stage you're in and the next steps you should take. So go ahead and click the link in the description and download the blissful exit audit so that you can get a clear picture of where you are, especially if you're ready to head out the door. You deserve this, and I'll see you in the next video.